Today's story is titled Asterisk. My husband was about to be named regional president, and my mother-in-law handed me divorce papers, telling me to know my place and leave. 2 hours later, he was fired. Asterisk. Today, I want to share the story of my life. It is the story of a daughter-in-law who thought she was stepping through the gates of heaven, only to realize she had wandered into a house full of hurricanes. Before the wedding, I firmly believed that marrying him was the best decision of my life. I thought that as long as two people loved each other, any obstacle could be overcome. But after moving in with his family, layers of his true nature began to peel away, and I realized one harsh truth. When you marry a man, you don't just marry him, you marry his entire ecosystem. Boston, a damp day in early spring. Condensation beaded on the walls, and the antique hardwood floors were freezing. Clothes took 3 days to dry in the drafty laundry room. I stood in the first-floor kitchen of a historic 3-story row house in the North End, holding a dish towel in front of a space heater, wondering if I had gotten married or signed a lifetime contract for indentured servitude. Our romance had started with lunch dates. He picked me up a few times, occasionally buying me a lobster roll or clam chowder from a famous spot down the street. He was charming. He talked about Boston's history, the Revolutionary War, the cobblestone streets rambling on until I, a small-town girl from Scranton, Pennsylvania, almost forgot to head back to the office to finish my audit reports. He told me, "Marry me, Kate. I'll give you a place to belong in Boston. My family's house is tucked away, but it's prime real estate in the city. My parents are easygoing. They just want a good daughter-in-law." Hearing him, my heart melted. My family in Scranton wasn't poor, but we certainly weren't wealthy. My parents ran a small hardware store their whole lives, with simple dreams. I thought long and hard, and one day, I called home. "Mom, I think I've found a good man." On the day of the rehearsal dinner, my relatives drove up from Pennsylvania. Everyone praised the groom's family. Old Boston money, that's wonderful. A 3-story historic row house right near the harbor. Your future kids will have it easy. My dad stood on the second-floor balcony, looking down at the busy street, his eyes tearing up. He turned to me and whispered, "Kate, your mother and I don't have much of a fortune to give you. When you enter their family, remember to live with grace. A kind daughter-in-law brings peace to a home, you hear?" I hugged his arm and thought, I will do my absolute best. On our wedding day, I wore a beautiful white gown, stepping out of the bridal suite to the cheers of my bridesmaids. Michael looked at me, whistling. "There's my wife, a true Bostonian wife now." At that moment, we held hands tightly, making all sorts of vows. In front of both families, he promised, "Don't worry, Mr. and Mrs. Vance. I won't let Kate suffer. I'll take care of making the money. She just has to focus on looking beautiful." The whole reception hall laughed. I was a bit embarrassed, but felt a warm glow. I had no idea how deeply ironic those words would sound years later. During my first few months as a daughter-in-law, things weren't terrible right away. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, was still somewhat polite. "For a girl from a blue-collar town, you're quite handy. This pot roast is seasoned perfectly," she'd say. She often talked about her late husband, how she had raised Michael all by herself. Her voice was a mix of self-pity and immense pride. I poured my whole life into him. Now he's a branch director, and soon enough, he'll be a top executive. I just want to see him settled. Hearing that, I felt sympathetic and told myself to love her like my own mother. I woke up early to make breakfast, stopped by Whole Foods after work to buy premium groceries, and stayed up late doing laundry and mopping floors, simply thinking that if I tried a little harder, the house would be peaceful. Michael was different back then, too. Every evening, he'd take me out for Italian food in the North End or a walk along the Charles River. He used to hold my hand and say, "See, you're a certified city girl now. Someday, our kids are going to run around these very streets." My heart would flutter. Sometimes, if we got home late, my mother-in-law would gently remind us, "It's fine to go out while you're young, but come home earlier so the neighbors don't gossip." Those gentle remarks feel like a dream now, the classic bait and switch. After 6 months, things began to shift. It wasn't a massive explosion, but rather small thorns, subtle remarks, side eyes, and shifting responsibilities. One evening, I came home late from work, but still managed to roast a chicken, mash potatoes, and prepare a fresh salad. Eleanor didn't praise me anymore. Instead, she clicked her tongue. This kind of heavy, rustic food might be fine in Pennsylvania, but people in our circles eat a bit more refined. A woman needs to learn. A man is wealthy because of his friends, but he is respectable because of his wife. Michael is a director. If he eats this carelessly, people will laugh at him. I forced a smile. Yes, Eleanor. I'll take a cooking class on weekends to diversify the menu. She looked me up and down, her tone half joking, half serious. Just don't forget you married into this house. It's not a hotel. You can have your little career, but household duties must be perfectly managed. I only have one son, and I won't let him suffer. It seemed like a normal conversation, but it carried a quiet warning. Asterisk. You are the daughter-in-law. Remember your place. Asterisk. Meanwhile, Michael grew busier. Instead of taking me out, he frequently texted, I have to entertain clients tonight. Eat without me. First, it was once a week, then twice, then it became the norm. I would walk home from the subway alone, carrying heavy grocery bags through the cramped North End streets, smelling the exhaust fumes mixed with garlic from the nearby restaurants. I'd walk into an empty living room, hearing only the TV blaring as Eleanor watched her shows. Some nights, I waited until 11 p.m. for him to get home. He'd smell of craft beer and expensive bourbon. I'd pour him a glass of water and ask gently, what was the emergency at the company tonight? He would brush it off. Relax, Kate. I'm networking, bringing in contracts for the firm. We'll both enjoy the payout later. An executive's wife needs to get used to a busy husband. Hearing the phrase executive's wife, I comforted myself. Asterisk, it's normal for businessmen to network. I just need to trust my husband and take care of the family. Asterisk, I didn't know that behind this busy executive facade, many things were secretly shifting. Once, when I visited my parents in Scranton, my mother noticed my hands were cracked from washing dishes in cold water and heard me mention working long hours with little sleep. She sighed. Kate, when a daughter marries, she's like water poured from a bowl. You made your choice, so try to endure it, but don't take everything upon yourself. I hugged her and smiled. I'm fine, Mom. It's not that bad. Michael loves me. I truly believed that. I believed that as long as I was good and tried hard, everything would be okay. I didn't realize that what I was seeing was just the tip of the iceberg. I would have to pay with my entire youth to see the submerged reality. The first-floor kitchen of that Boston row house remained as damp as my first day there. Outside, traffic horns blared. I put a pot of water on the stove, looking around the cramped space that my mother-in-law constantly boasted was million-dollar real estate. I suddenly remembered an old Southern proverb my grandmother used to say. Asterisk, a woman follows her husband like a boat follows the current. You never know how deep the water is until you're drowning. Asterisk, standing in that kitchen, I realized I was blindly navigating this family's river, unaware of where the deadly drop-offs were. At the end of every month, our house had a strict ritual. I would sit at the dining table, pull out my budgeting spreadsheet, and tally up the expenses: electricity, water, internet, trash collection, gas, groceries, Eleanor's recent chiropractor bills, and my own continuing education courses for my CPA license. Every single cent was pulled from my Times personal bank account. My salary as a senior auditor, plus side consulting gigs, was quite good, but even a good income has limits. Every time I sat punching numbers into my calculator, Eleanor's voice would drift from the living room. My Michael is a director, you know. He's always out with clients. The money he brings in is enough to feed the whole extended family. I would laugh bitterly. Where exactly was the money he was bringing in? I had yet to see a single dime of it. Whenever I gently asked, Honey, did your company process your bonus this month? He would casually reply, I put it in a separate account, so I have liquid cash for networking and travel. Just manage things with your salary, for now. When I land this massive project, I'll pay you back with interest. Don't worry. It sounded great, but the utility companies don't wait for massive projects. When the bill comes, you have to pay it. One night, I took a risk and brought my ledger to my mother-in-law. Eleanor, I've tracked all the household expenses. Could you look it over and see where we can cut back? Inflation is hitting hard lately. She glanced at the pages filled with numbers. Oh, please. What kind of woman nickels and dimes her own family? In this house, Michael takes care of the real money. He's a man. He knows how to spend it to make it. You're a woman. Your job is to make sure the kitchen runs smoothly and give me grandchildren, not obsess over dollars and cents. A woman's worth is in her husband, not a spreadsheet. I swallowed the words I wanted to say. My worthy husband was probably clinking martini glasses at some upscale bar at that very moment. My first Thanksgiving as a daughter-in-law, I was working like a dog. It was the end-of-year audit rush, and my files were as thick as encyclopedias. I came home exhausted, only to be thrown into roasting a massive turkey, polishing the antique silverware, and deep cleaning the guest rooms. Eleanor barked orders like a drill sergeant. Kate, do this. Kate, carry that. A woman marrying into a family must serve. The daughter-in-law is the servant. The son-in-law is the guest. I asked her, how much should we give your nieces and nephews for Christmas this year? She smiled, eyes narrowing. Well, we are a respectable Boston family. We can't let people think we're cheap. You make good money as an auditor. Just slip a couple $100 into each of their cards. With inflation, anything less is an insult. I opened my spreadsheet, multiplying and dividing. Christmas cash for his side, gifts for my side, plus the cost of hosting. My first holiday season in Boston wiped out months of my savings. On December 26th, I slipped up and said to Michael, I went a bit over budget this year. We need to plan better next year. Otherwise, we'll never be able to save, he frowned. Don't be stingy over a few holiday gifts. I can't have my family's reputation ruined by you being cheap. You're spending your own salary, so why are you complaining? I'll take care of everything later. Asterisk, you're spending your own salary. Asterisk, he dropped that sentence as lightly as a feather, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. I remembered my mother telling me that money is earned with blood, sweat, and tears. Use it so you don't feel humiliated. Right then, I started feeling deeply humiliated. The issue of having children slowly became another thorn. When we first got married, everyone smiled and asked, when are we getting grandbabies? I would politely smile. We're just letting nature take its course. A year, then nearly 2 years passed. My stomach remained flat. Michael and I eventually went to a fertility specialist. The doctor said I was perfectly healthy. I just needed to reduce my stress and sleep more. Before I could even catch my breath at home, Eleanor clicked her tongue. What kind of woman takes this long to get pregnant? Back in my day, I was pregnant with Michael 3 months after the wedding. Maybe your small-town diet ruined your body. I forced a tight smile. The doctor said, I'm completely fine, Eleanor. It's probably just because we both work so much. She cut me off. Doctors are just people. They sugarcoat things, but a toxic tree bears no fruit. You need to examine yourself. My friends tell me a lot of modern girls have bad energy. They marry a man and instantly block his bloodline. Asterisk. A toxic tree bears no fruit. Asterisk. The way she said it felt like she was carving the words into my forehead. That night, I told Michael, let's go to a major hospital for a more comprehensive checkup. The doctor previously suggested you should do some tests too, just to be sure. He brushed it off. Oh, stop listening to nonsense. I'm strong as an ox. I can drink guys under the table. And you want me to get tested. The problem is you. You overthink everything. If your mind isn't relaxed, how can you get pregnant? I stayed silent. If convicting someone without evidence was this easy, then nearly every fault in this house would naturally fall on my head. One weekend afternoon, Michael's extended family came over. Uncle Richard, Aunt Helen, and a few others. They sat around eating the clam chowder and crab cakes I had spent hours making, chatting casually. So, this is the new daughter-in-law? Pretty, but awfully skinny. Wonder if she can carry a child, Aunt Helen remarked. She needs to give Eleanor a grandson. Michael is the only son. A wealthy family without a male heir is a tragedy. My mother-in-law smiled warmly but didn't defend me. I'm getting anxious myself. A boy first would be perfect, but I suppose a girl. Well, a girl would be acceptable. Asterisk a girl would be acceptable. Asterisk, the words dropped onto the dining table. I kept my head down, serving soup, trying to hide the sting in my eyes. I didn't hate kids. I actually wanted them. But the way they spoke about a future child as a mere symbol of prestige for their bloodline made me feel more like an incubator than a human being. That afternoon, while I was washing the mountain of dishes, Eleanor walked by and dropped a casual remark. "Kate, try harder. A woman who enters a family and can't produce a grandchild, people will talk, and it will ruin your husband's life." I looked up, the taste of dish soap splashing on my lips, unable to tell if the saltiness was from the water or my tears. Things like this didn't strike like a sudden catastrophe. They were tiny, daily abrasions. A passing comment, a side eye, shifting the blame. I slowly realized that this $1 million row house was only valuable to those who owned it. A laborer like me would never touch the gold. I was only allowed to handle the grease and grime. At that time, I still didn't know how many massive storms lay ahead. The water was just starting to reach my ankles. The news arrived on a scorching Tuesday in July. I was sitting in my office, buried in audit reports, when my phone vibrated constantly. Michael's name flashed on the screen. "Come home early today. I have huge news." His voice sounded ecstatic, completely different from his usual tone. I asked, "What's going on? Did you win the lottery?" He laughed loudly. "Close enough, but I don't want to jinx it over the phone. Just come home and wear something nice. We might have company." I paused. My instincts as an auditor told me that any sudden, explosive news involving money or careers should be scrutinized twice. But I packed up my laptop and left early. That afternoon, the North End was packed. Tourists, honking cars, the smell of pizza and exhaust. I pushed through the crowd and heard my mother-in-law's booming laugh from the second-floor window before I even reached the door. "She's home. Come see, Kate. My son is destined for greatness. Our ancestors are truly blessing us." I walked up the stairs and saw Michael sitting in the center of the living room. His dress shirt was buttoned to the top, his hair perfectly styled with gel, and on the coffee table sat a formal corporate memorandum with a red seal. He held the paper up like a championship trophy. "Look at this. Prepare yourself. You are looking at the incoming regional president of Prescott Enterprises. Congratulate your husband." I picked up the paper and read the fine print, trying to hide my nervous smile. This is a nomination for the board to review. It still needs to pass a shareholder vote and get final approval from the private equity firm backing the company. It's not a done deal yet, but looking at his radiant face, I couldn't bear to pour cold water on him. "Congratulations, honey. I hope you secure the seat and hold on to it." He nudged my shoulder. How could I lose it? They wouldn't have nominated me if it wasn't a sure thing. Just remember, from now on, when you introduce yourself, you're the president's wife. Got it? My mother-in-law's eyes were practically glowing. "I told you, he has the aura of a leader. A man with a strong jawline and broad forehead like his is destined for power." Madame Celeste saw it all in his astrological chart. She lowered her voice and shot me a glance. "The only problem is his wife brings heavy, dark energy." I shivered slightly, feeling as if someone had just poured ice water down my back. That evening, while I was chopping vegetables, Eleanor called down to me. "Kate, take tomorrow off. Michael and I are taking you to see Madame Celeste over in Cambridge. We need her to read the energy alignments and do a spiritual blessing for him. A massive promotion like this can't be taken lightly." I looked up. "I can take the day off, but who is Madame Celeste?" She spoke as if it were common knowledge. "The most famous spiritual advisor in New England. Politicians and CEOs go to her. It's a waste not to go. Better safe than sorry." I hated this kind of pseudo-spiritual nonsense, but not wanting to ruin her mood, I agreed. The next morning, the three of us arrived at a chic, incense-filled Victorian house near Harvard Square. The walls were lined with photos of Madame Celeste posing with VIP clients. Madame Celeste was a woman in her 50s, draped in silk, wearing heavy turquoise jewelry, sitting behind a polished mahogany table. Eleanor respectfully placed a thick envelope of cash on the table. "Please, madam, look into my son's future. He's about to be named president of his firm, but but I want to ensure everything is rock solid. Madame Celeste looked at the paper with Michael's birth date, tapped her manicured fingers on the table, and hummed. After a while, she looked up, scanning me from head to toe, and sighed heavily. This man is indeed destined for the highest executive seat, but his path to power is currently being blocked by his wife. I thought I misheard. Excuse me? What do you mean? She waved her hand dismissively. Let me finish. Your wife's aura is ruled by Saturn in a destructive house. She has shadow energy. If she doesn't undergo a severe karmic cleansing and sever her negative spiritual ties, his promotion will turn into a disaster. Best case, he loses the job. Worst case, his health or life will be in grave danger. Hearing the words life in danger, Eleanor's face turned white. Madam, what do we do? Everything is prepared. If something happens to him, I'll die. The advisor pulled out a brochure of holistic retreats, crystals, and energy-clearing rituals. To secure his path, she must undergo a quantum energy realignment. It requires customized crystal grids, a 7-day remote cleansing, and specific high-frequency talismans. Not just anyone can perform this. You're lucky you came to me. Eleanor was panicking. How much, madam? Just name the price, as long as my son is safe. The advisor punched some numbers into a gold-plated calculator. The retreat, the rituals, the talismans, and my consulting fee. It comes to exactly $15,000. Once it's done, you can rest easy. You get what you pay for. I felt like someone had just hit me in the back of the head with a brick. Asterisk $15,000. Asterisk. The number danced in front of my eyes. That is not a small amount of money for anyone, even someone with my salary. Eleanor was nodding furiously. Yes, I'll get the money together. On the drive home, she turned to me, her voice firm. You have that emergency savings account, right? Withdraw the money for the ritual. What are you hoarding it for? We need to do this properly, so Michael's reputation is secure. I took a deep breath, trying to speak calmly. Eleanor, that money is an emergency fund I set aside in case the company has cash flow issues. We still owe the private equity firm, and Michael knows this. Furthermore, this is all based on what a scam artist said. There's no proof of any of this. She glared at me. Proof? What more proof do you need? She advises the elite. You're an auditor. You only care about your Excel spreadsheets. But life isn't a spreadsheet. This is my son's life and career, and you're haggling over a few pennies? I turned to Michael, hoping he would be the voice of reason, but he just stared out the window, his voice flat. Just be flexible for once, Kate. I'm out there hustling, closing deals for our future. This ritual is necessary, and you're clinging to your savings account like a miser. Sometimes I think you're too rigid. I bit my lip. Asterisk, rigid, or rational. Asterisk, $15,000 wasn't pocket change. In my mind, I saw the company's debt metrics, the cash flow as tight as a piano wire. If I pulled out a massive chunk of cash right now, just to burn on incense and crystals, I couldn't imagine the consequences. That night, I sat alone with the household ledgers. The black and white numbers were crystal clear. I had built this emergency fund by taking on extra freelance work for years, tightening my belt, skipping buying a nice dress or high-end makeup. Not because I was cheap, but because I knew that in this house, if my emergency fund didn't exist, nobody would have a single dollar to bail them out when a real crisis hit. Michael walked into the room, looking annoyed. I'll be honest with you. Ever since you married me, I feel like you love your bank account more than your husband. It's $15,000, not $150,000. You're acting like we're losing the house. I looked up at him. Do you know that $15,000 is the exact amount I've saved to literally bail out your company if the market turns? Have you ever actually sat down with me to look at how much debt the firm is carrying? He snapped. Don't bring your auditor attitude home to lecture me. I'm the executive at the company. I know exactly what I'm doing. Your job is just to support your husband. That's it. The phrase times lecture me times made me freeze. So, in his eyes, my professional financial analysis was just a nagging wife's lecture. Eleanor, who had been eavesdropping outside the door, barged in, pointing a finger directly at me. See? I told you. What kind of wife is so stingy she won't pay for a ritual to protect her husband? You're deliberately trying to block his success. If anything happens to him, I swear to God I won't let you live it down. Looking at her bloodshot eyes and my husband, who had turned his back to me, I suddenly realized that the future of this family had become a stage play. And in this play, I was the villain, the dark energy that needed to be extorted for cash to be forgiven. Along with my anger, a vague sense of dread crept in. If I yielded this time, how far would they go next? After our fight over the $15,000, the atmosphere in the house was as heavy as a funeral. My mother-in-law stopped calling me Kate, sweetheart, and switched to her or that girl. Michael avoided making eye contact. He'd come home, glue his eyes to his phone, smiling and texting, but completely ignored the topic of the ritual. I thought things had temporarily settled down. I had no idea it was just the eye of the hurricane. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, Michael stepped out of the bathroom. His hair was perfectly slicked back, wearing a brand new tie and smelling of expensive cologne. He stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his cuffs, asking with a boastful grin, "Do I look like a president today?" I frowned. "Did you get more news?" He beamed. The board made their decision. The upcoming shareholder meeting is just a formality, and the private equity firm is leaning my way. Get ready to be the first lady of the company. The term Times First Lady times sounded both laughable and slightly nauseating. Before I could say a word, Eleanor came down from the third floor. She wore a new silk blouse, her lips painted a soft pink, beaming like a lottery winner. "I told you! My Michael is meant for greatness. From now on, nobody will ever call my son a lowly director again. President. It's guaranteed." She turned to me, her voice turning icy. "You need to leave work early today to prep the food. We're having the extended family over to celebrate tonight. Uncle Richard and Aunt Helen are coming. This is a huge event. Everything must be perfect." I nodded. "Yes, I'll handle it." Nobody asked if I had a major audit due that day, or if I could even manage to leave early. It seemed that in this house's schedule, my career was invisible. That afternoon, I begged my boss to let me leave an hour early. I frantically drove to the supermarket. Steak, shrimp cocktail, gourmet cheeses, expensive wine. I was doing mental math the whole way to make sure I didn't forget anything. When I reached the front door, I saw my mother-in-law sitting on the living room sofa, constantly dialing her phone. "Yes, please come early. My Michael is going to be the president. It brings honor to our whole family. Yes, see you tonight." I hauled the heavy grocery bags into the kitchen. Before I could even catch my breath, her voice echoed down. "Kate, hurry up. When the guests arrive, we need appetizers out immediately." "Don't embarrass us," I said. "Yes, Eleanor," rolled up my sleeves and started cooking. Sweat ran down my spine, sticking my shirt to my back. But I had no time to change. Upstairs, the sounds of Michael and his mother laughing rang out. I heard him say, "I need to get a professional portrait taken tomorrow to hang in the boardroom." Around 7 p.m., the guests started arriving. The narrow North End street was packed with their luxury SUVs. Uncle Richard, his belly protruding, walked in smoking a cigar. Booming, "Where is he?" "Let me look at the future president." The cousins followed, laughing loudly. "Gotta call you Mr. President now!" Michael's hitting the big leagues. Michael stood in the center of the room in a crisp white shirt and slacks, his face flushed from the scotch he'd been drinking since the afternoon. He smiled, holding his hands up modestly. "Come on, you guys are making me nervous." Eleanor lifted her chin proudly. "What is there to be nervous about? They chose him for a reason. Soon enough, he'll be running the whole city. You just wait." The room erupted in laughter. As for me, I quietly carried trays of drinks out, poured wine, and retreated back to the kitchen. Occasionally, someone would glance at me and ask dismissively, "Oh, the wife is here. Looks busy." I just smiled, nodded, and went back to checking the sizzling steaks. When dinner was served, I pulled out a chair at the far corner of the table. Before I could even sit, Eleanor said, "Kate, why don't you wait in the back? The kids are hungry. Let them have your seat." So, I surrendered my chair to a teenage nephew, took a small plate of food into the kitchen, and ate quickly while keeping an eye out to see if anyone needed refills. The dining room was filled with the clinking of glasses. To the future president, may you hold your seat firmly and pull the rest of us up with you. Aunt Helen chewed on a shrimp, glancing toward the kitchen. Kate, remember to make your husband throw some big contracts our way once he's in charge. You know the saying, a submissive wife makes a wealthy house. So be submissive, understand? The table laughed again. I forced a smile, but inside, I felt more like a piece of furniture than a human being. What did submissive mean to them? It meant staying silent, nodding, and opening my wallet without hesitation. Right then, Aunt Helen sighed. But you know, a president needs an heir to pass the legacy to. It's been forever, and Eleanor hasn't had anything to brag about. Have you two been holding off on purpose? The room went silent for a split second before Uncle Richard barked a laugh. Kate works all day and night. With a schedule like that, how is a baby supposed to stick? Tell her to quit working and focus on repopulating the Prescott line. Eleanor didn't laugh. She just sighed heavily. I'm incredibly anxious. We only have Michael. If we don't get a grandson, it's a tragedy. Sometimes I think it's just bad luck. Madame Celeste said he is destined for power, but his path to children is blocked by his wife's dark energy. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped my plate. Michael, who was currently sipping his scotch, just smirked coldly. We'll see how things play out. No rush. No rush. Asterisk. No rush. Asterisk. He said those two words as casually as if he were discussing buying a new jacket. Later, when the guests were heavily buzzed, I brought out a fruit platter. As I set it down, Aunt Helen looked me up and down. You're so frail and pale. No wonder you can't get pregnant. A woman needs to take care of her body. You work like a mule. Even if you manage to conceive, the baby would be weak. Eleanor chimed in instantly. I told her to quit the corporate grind, stay home, help me with the house, and focus on having a baby. She told me she wanted to advance in her career. I was disgusted. What is a woman trying to advance for? Ultimately, your job is the kitchen and the nursery. It's not like she's ever going to be president of a company. Laughter erupted again. This time, a few pairs of eyes looked at me with open judgment. The cramped living room suddenly felt suffocating. The noise of their voices, the clinking silverware, it all felt like it was drilling into my brain. I made an excuse to go downstairs to clean up. As I reached the staircase, I heard a few of the aunts huddled in the corner, whispering, but loud enough to drift down to me. I have to admit, that new assistant at Michael's office is quite a catch. She's sweet-spoken, respectful to her elders. That's the kind of girl fit for a president's wife. My mother-in-law's voice joined in, deliberately ambiguous. Oh, you mean Jessica? Yes, she has a very sweet mouth. The only issue is she came along late. If he divorces now, people will gossip. But who knows how life turns out? Someone whispered. Who says a president can only have one wife in his lifetime? The group giggled. I stood dead still on the stairs, holding an empty tray. So, in their minds, swapping out a daughter-in-law was as easy as changing a light bulb. That night, after I finished cleaning, my hands were raw from the hot water, my back aching. Michael walked into the kitchen. He was still wearing his dress shirt, the top buttons undone, smelling strongly of alcohol. I have a photo shoot with the corporate PR team tomorrow. I need to buy a new tailored suit. Transfer some money into my account, so I look the part. I bit back my anger. Use your own salary. I just paid the electricity, the water, and the mortgage this month, plus the massive grocery bill for tonight's party. I have almost nothing left. He frowned. It's always I paid. If I wasn't out there making connections, do you think we'd have a room full of people cheering for us tonight? Stop ruining my mood on my big day. Asterisk. His big day? Asterisk, I turned around and finished scrubbing the last pot, not answering him. I heard his unsteady footsteps going up the stairs, followed by the slam of our bedroom door. I sat down on the threshold between the kitchen and the back patio. Looking at the spotless white sink, I listened to Eleanor on the phone upstairs, still bragging. Yes, my Michael is the president now. Oh, his wife? She's average. At least she earns a paycheck. But who cares? As long as my son holds the power, that's all that matters. Not once in that conversation did I hear the word daughter-in-law. I was just a silent ghost haunting this house, managing everything from their meals to their bills. But when they talked about family, all they saw was an empty executive chair waiting to be filled. That night, for the first time, I asked myself, asterisk, if I disappeared from this house tomorrow, would anyone genuinely miss me? Asterisk. That question lingered in my mind until I remembered the serious face of an old friend, David Hayes, a corporate lawyer I had worked with on a major merger years ago. The thought of an exit strategy sparked, then grew clearer. People say fire tests gold, and adversity tests character. I realized that a crisis tests both human nature and the very concept of family. And it was a crisis from a few years prior that taught me I couldn't walk into this marriage empty-handed. About 2 years after our wedding, Prescott Enterprises took a devastating fall. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing emails when I got a text from Michael. Can you come to the office this afternoon? I need you to look at something. He rarely texted me during work hours. I asked my boss for permission and drove over to his headquarters. As soon as I walked in, the atmosphere was suffocating. Employees were rushing around. The finance department was brightly lit in the middle of the afternoon. The accountants looked like they were on the verge of tears. Michael pulled me into a small conference room, locked the door, and dropped a massive stack of financial files in front of me. Look at this. The bank just called. If we default on this maturity date, they are cutting our credit line. And our private equity backers are hesitant to inject more capital. I flipped through the pages, columns of bleeding red numbers. Accounts receivable that were over a year past due, half-finished investments. I suddenly felt a chill down my spine. Not because of the numbers themselves, but because I knew that if this company collapsed, that historic Boston row house was just an empty shell. They would lose everything. I looked him dead in the eye. Are you sure you've told Eleanor the truth? Have you told the board? If we don't restructure right now, nobody can save you. He stayed silent, then sighed. My mother only wants to hear good news. Her blood pressure spikes if I mention debt. And the board, you know them. It's all uncles and cousins. They all want to keep their high-paying titles, but nobody wants to face our mistakes. I called you because I trust you. That phrase, times I trust you, times softened my heart at the time. Though looking back, I know a large part of that trust was him trusting my wallet and my crisis management skills. That night, I stayed in the conference room until past 9 p.m., spinning a pen, mapping out scenarios on a whiteboard. Finally, there was only one path left. We had to bring in a massive private equity firm, Apex Capital, and accept a huge dilution of equity in exchange for a cash injection to stop the bleeding. I told him, "You're going to have to accept much tighter oversight. The PE firm will scrutinize every single penny. But if we don't do this, the company will slowly bleed to death. Make your choice." Michael rubbed his head. "I don't know how to do this. You calculate it for me. You're the auditor. You understand these Wall Street guys better than I do." I looked at him for a long time. Part of me pitied him, the only son of a mother who treated him like a god among men. But the rational, professional part of me whispered, asterisk, you are risking your own career, your reputation, by tying it to your husband's sinking ship. Asterisk. On the day we negotiated the Memorandum of Understanding with Apex Capital, I sat directly across from their legal team. They were sharp-suited executives from New York, firing off aggressive terms. On our side, besides Michael, the board consisted of his uncles, some nodding off, others checking their Rolexes, clearly out of their depth in a high-stakes corporate buyout. When a recess was called, I quickly texted someone. "David, I need you here, as soon as possible. There are clauses I need a lawyer's eyes on to be safe." 15 minutes later, David Hayes, my old college friend, now a highly respected corporate attorney, walked in. Wearing a simple blue dress shirt and wire-rimmed glasses, he nodded at the room and pulled up a chair next to me. Unlike the superficial glances of Michael's uncles, David read every single line meticulously. He paused at the sensitive sections, lowered his voice, and asked me, "Are you sure about this, Kate? If you sign off on this, Apex is going to have total control. But if you don't, I give this company 3 months before Chapter 11 bankruptcy." I bit my lip. "I've thought about it, but I have my own conditions," he smirked. "Sounds like the Kate I knew in college debate class. What's the condition?" I lowered my voice, articulating every word. "I am putting my professional reputation and my financial expertise on the line to make Apex comfortable with investing. But I refuse to be kicked to the curb once they recover, while someone else takes the credit. I want Michael's executive position tied directly to his marital responsibility and ethical conduct. If he betrays me, if this family decides I am no longer one of them, I have no obligation to protect his seat. I want it written that if he acts unethically or causes a divorce, the very chair they are so proud of will be ripped out from under him." David was silent for a moment, his eyes sharp. "You want to tie the regional president role to a morality and marital stability clause. So if he violates his marriage vows or commits an ethical breach, he loses the job." Yes, it sounds emotional, but it's a very practical corporate failsafe. I don't want to find myself begging to stay in a house where I'm disrespected. I want a loaded gun in my pocket, just in case. David nodded. "I understand. It's entirely legal, provided the PE firm agrees. And they will, because they want a competent, stable leader at the helm. And they know you times are the actual brains keeping this ship afloat. I'll draft the language so it's airtight. But prepare yourself, Kate. If you carry a weapon, you must accept that one day, you might have to pull the trigger." I smiled bitterly. "I don't want to walk into a shark tank bleeding. I just want to ensure that if the love dies, I don't walk away with nothing." In the days that followed, a small, seemingly dry paragraph was inserted into the new corporate bylaws, asterisk, the executive authority and the position of regional president of Mr. Michael Prescott shall be maintained on the condition that the company records no severe ethical violations and that the marital union between Mr. Michael Prescott and Mrs. Catherine Vance does not suffer dissolution due to fault or unethical behavior by Mr. Prescott that could negatively impact the firm's public standing and stability. Asterisk, David brilliantly added a caveat, allowing the PE firm the unilateral right to suspend or replace the executive if they received verifiable evidence of ethical misconduct. In plain English, if Michael screwed me over, I had the legal and financial authorization to detonate his career. On the day the ink dried, the Apex executives insisted the person who negotiated the deal be present. They shook Michael's hand, then shook mine, saying, "We decided to move forward largely because we trust Catherine's capabilities. She is our point of contact when things get complicated." I glanced at my husband and saw a flash of pure jealousy in his eyes. But a second later, he smiled. "Yes, my wife is brilliant. I still have a lot to learn from her." It sounded like a proud compliment, but underneath, it made my skin crawl. I knew that insecure men rarely tolerate a wife who is smarter than they are for very long. After the deal, the company avoided the massive crater of bankruptcy. Prescott Enterprises stabilized and even launched 2 new logistics hubs. During family gatherings, the relatives started bragging again. Thanks to Eleanor's son, the company survived the crisis. And now he's about to be named regional president. Whenever I heard that, I just smiled tightly. Eleanor loved hearing it. Once, in front of the uncles, she patted Michael's shoulder. "My son is destined for the throne. His wife is all right. She knows how to crunch numbers, but he is the mastermind." In those moments, I felt like a shadow, standing behind a giant cardboard cutout of a hero named Michael. That evening, I met David at a small coffee shop near the Boston Common, a place we used to study at. The wind off the water was crisp. David looked at me and asked point blank, "Do you regret saving his family's company?" "To be honest, I thought you were going to let them drown in their own incompetence." I smiled faintly. "I'm still part of this family, at least on paper. If the company collapsed, the debt would drag me down, and probably my parents too. I couldn't be cruel enough to just watch." He nodded. "Yeah, that's you. But remember, the clause I drafted wasn't put there just to scare him. If you hold a knife, You have to know when to strike. Don't go soft and let them eat you alive. I looked down, stirring my coffee, watching the foam swirl. A voice in my head whispered, Asterisk, I wonder if I'll ever have to use that knife. I hope not. But in this life, who can be sure? Asterisk. After that crisis, Michael became even busier. More meetings, more networking dinners, more praise from his family. Meanwhile, I was treated like an accessory nice to have, but easily discarded. Eleanor stuck to her usual script. A woman doesn't need to understand corporate affairs. Your job is the house and the kids. Let the men handle the business. Whenever I heard that, I would just smile, but my mind would immediately jump to that tiny clause in the corporate bylaws. It was like a life vest hidden under the bed. Normally, nobody notices it, but when the ship hits an iceberg, the one wearing the vest is the only one who survives. I just didn't expect the day to inflate that life vest to arrive so quickly. Jessica Thorne entered my life purely by accident. One night, Michael came home, eating dinner and casually bragging, I hired a new executive assistant today. She's quick, hardworking, and speaks fluent Spanish. Finally, I don't have to type my own emails. I passed him a bowl of pasta and asked casually, That's great, it'll take some weight off your shoulders. What's her name? Jessica. Jessica Thorne. Moved here from a small town in Maine a few years ago, but she's got a great personality. Next time you drop by the office, I'll introduce you. At the time, I just said, To me, Jessica was just a name. A few weeks later, I stopped by the Prescott office in the afternoon to drop off some tax documents. The hallway smelled of floor cleaner mixed with a sweet, floral perfume. As I approached the director's office, I heard a high, sweet voice. Michael, I finished printing the schedule for next week. Let me know if I need to tweak anything before you present it to the board. I pushed the door open slightly. Before it swung wide, I saw a girl around 25. Her hair perfectly curled, wearing a tight pencil skirt and a white blouse unbuttoned just one button too low. She was standing pressed against my husband's desk, leaning into him, pointing at the monitor with a bright smile. I adjusted this section to make it look more aggressive. The PE guys love that. Michael was smiling, nodding along. When he saw me, he froze for a split second. Oh, my wife is here. Kate, this is Jessica, my assistant. Jess, this is Kate. Jessica turned around, her smile never faltering, her eyes sparkling. Hi, Kate. It's so nice to meet you. Michael talks about you all the time. He says you're the secret weapon of the company. I admire you so much, I smiled politely. Nice to meet you. I just came to drop off these files. You two carry on. On the surface, nothing was technically wrong. It was all professional, but the way Jessica looked at my husband lingered just a little too long, and the physical distance between them was a few inches too intimate. I reminded myself not to be paranoid. Asterisk, I'm an auditor. I audit numbers, not people. Asterisk. A few days later, I came home early and found my mother-in-law sitting in the living room. On the coffee table was a massive gift basket, organic teas, imported honeys, and a pure cashmere scarf. She was unwrapping it, beaming. Oh, this girl is just too sweet. She said her family in Maine sent down some artisanal goods, and she brought some for me to stay healthy. She even told me, the president's mother needs to be in top health to live long with us. It warms my heart. I asked, who is the gift from? Eleanor. Who else? Jessica, Michael's assistant. Such a respectful girl. Speaks so softly, always polite to her elders. Unlike some people who come home and bury their faces in the kitchen without saying a word, I froze. So, from being just the new assistant, Jessica had rapidly evolved into our sweet Jessica in my mother-in-law's vocabulary. That night at dinner, Eleanor talked endlessly about Jessica. She told me, Eleanor, if I had an easygoing mother-in-law like you, I'd be the luckiest girl in the world. It made me pity her. A poor girl moving to the city, working and studying, yet she still remembers to buy gifts for her boss's mother. A woman like that truly knows her place. I picked at my food and smiled tightly. Well, I'm glad someone is treating you well. Eleanor shot me a look. Yes, well, Men cherish women who know how to speak sweetly. A woman who knows how to talk wins the world. A woman who just puts her head down to work and argues logic all day only ends up ruining her own life. She said it to the room, but I knew exactly who the target was. Jessica's name started appearing in the house with alarming frequency. One day, it was Jessica recommended a great cardiologist for me. Another day, Jessica booked a fantastic reservation at an exclusive restaurant for Michael. One evening, I returned late from a business trip to Chicago. As soon as I set my suitcase down, I heard Eleanor's voice from the living room. "Is that you, Kate? Jessica came over this afternoon and reorganized the plants on the balcony for me. It looks so much brighter. Such a handy girl. It feels like she's part of the family." I paused. Asterisk, part of the family. Asterisk. The words echoed clearly in my ears. Suddenly, I felt that in this massive Boston house, an outsider was slowly becoming family, while I, the family on paper, was slowly becoming the outsider. One day, I showed up at the Prescott office unannounced. I needed Michael to sign some compliance documents for the PE firm. Walking down the hall, I heard soft giggling coming from his office. The door was slightly ajar. I raised my hand to knock, but stopped dead. Through the crack, I saw Jessica standing right next to Michael. Her hand was draped over the back of his chair, her head resting near his shoulder. He leaned back, his hand resting comfortably on her waist. He laughed. "If we go on a business trip together like this, aren't you worried people will talk?" Jessica pouted playfully. "Let them talk about you. Why would they talk about me? When you become president, I'll be the presidential executive assistant. Girls will be begging for my job." They both laughed. That laughter hit my ears and sent a chill down my spine, like someone had cranked the AC to freezing right behind my neck. I knocked on the door. In an instant, they jumped apart so fast they nearly knocked the chair over. Michael spun around, his face draining of color, before he forced it back to a mask of calm. "Oh, Kate, why didn't you tell me you were coming?" I kept my voice utterly steady. I had to drop off the Apex Capital files. Sorry to interrupt. Jessica's face instantly shifted into professional mode. "Michael and I were just going over the itinerary for next month's conference. Kate, come in, let me get you some water or tea." I looked at her hands, which were still trembling slightly, and her hair, which was hastily brushed back. I suddenly felt exhausted. I dropped the files on the desk. "Here are the papers. Review them and sign them by this afternoon. I have a meeting. I can't stay." Michael looked at me, a flash of annoyance in his eyes because I hadn't announced my arrival. There was absolutely no shame or guilt from a man who had just been caught with his hands on his assistant. I didn't bring it up immediately when I got home. I wanted to give him a chance to confess on his own. At dinner, Eleanor was still rambling on about a recipe Jessica had given her, how Jessica loved salads but hated spicy food. Michael just looked down at his plate, occasionally texting, a smirk on his face. I waited until Eleanor went upstairs to watch her shows. It was just the two of us in the kitchen. I spoke up. "When I came to the office today, you and Jessica looked awfully close." He looked up and raised an eyebrow. "Close? What do you mean? A boss and an assistant need a good rapport to get things done. Are you getting paranoid again?" I kept my cool. "I'm not being paranoid. I saw your hand on her waist. I think we need to set clear boundaries. If you are developing feelings for someone else, be a man and tell me to my face. Don't let this slide into a mess." He let out a short, condescending laugh. "You're an auditor, so you're used to viewing everything as hard evidence and spreadsheets. But human interaction isn't a balance sheet. You see a hand near a waist, and you immediately calculate adultery. What kind of crazy jealousy is this?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Then what is your definition of adultery? Do I need to catch you two naked in a hotel room before you admit it?" He slammed his fork down. "Watch your mouth. Stop bringing that internet feminist garbage into my house. I'm a businessman. I need someone who supports my workflow. Jessica is just an assistant. Stop blowing things out of proportion. A smart woman makes her husband afraid of losing her. You just live in constant fear of losing me. It's exhausting." His words cut deeper than the image I saw that afternoon. I replied slowly, I'm not afraid of losing you. I'm afraid of wasting my effort. I saved your company. I put my professional integrity on the line. I refuse to let an ungrateful, cheating man sit comfortably in a throne that I helped build." He scoffed. "You're bringing up the company again. I don't deny you helped, but don't delude yourself into thinking you're irreplaceable. There are plenty of brilliant people out there. They just hadn't walked into my life yet." Hearing that, I felt a heavy finality. There are words that, once spoken, prove you are no longer fighting on the same side. That night, lying next to the man who once held my hand and promised to take care of me, I couldn't sleep. His light snoring filled the room. His phone lit up a few times with midnight texts. I didn't check them. I just stared at the ceiling thinking, asterisk, if I let go today, will I regret it? Asterisk. In the dark, I remembered David's calm face holding the contract files. I remembered the morality clause. The weapon he told me to keep hidden flashed in my mind. I didn't know how I would use it yet, but I knew that from that moment on, I was no longer the subservient wife trapped in the kitchen, blinded by the title of an executive's wife. From the moment I saw his hand on another woman's waist, a different door opened in my mind, leading down a path I had never dared to imagine. That evening, I was reviewing my personal files to renew my life insurance policy when I remembered the property deeds kept in the small safe in our bedroom. They were the titles to 4 investment properties I had purchased over the years using my bonuses and side hustle money. Naively believing that what's mine is ours, I had agreed to put both of our names on the deeds. I opened the safe. The thick envelopes were still there, but when I opened the first deed, my vision went dark. Under property owners, the names Catherine Vance and Michael Prescott had vanished, replaced by one large name, asterisk Eleanor Prescott. Asterisk, I frantically opened the second, third, and fourth deeds, all of them. My name and my husband's name were gone. I flipped to the transfer history. It clearly stated, asterisk quitclaim deed transfer from Michael Prescott and Catherine Vance to Eleanor Prescott, notarized. Asterisk, below the date, my signature times Catherine Vance times was written out perfectly. It looked 80% like my handwriting, but looking closely, I knew instantly I hadn't written it. I have a photographic memory for documents. I had never sat down and signed a quitclaim deed, giving away my real estate to my mother-in-law. Yet here were the papers. Here was the signature. A freezing chill ran from my neck down my spine. In that moment, I heard my grandmother's voice from years ago. Asterisk, black ink on white paper. Honey, don't trust a man blindly, or he'll sign your life away and leave you homeless before you even know it. Asterisk, I grabbed one of the deeds and ran downstairs. My mother-in-law was sitting in the living room, clipping coupons while a sitcom blared on the TV. She saw me and raised an eyebrow. "Why do you look like you've seen a ghost?" I held out the deed. "Eleanor, why were these properties transferred into your name? It says we gifted them to you. I never signed this." She barely glanced at it, her voice utterly casual. "Family property belongs to the family. What does it matter whose name is on it?" Michael told me he was transferring them to my name, so it's easier to get leverage for bank loans if the company needs it, and to avoid tax complications. He said he asked you, and you agreed, so he went ahead and did it. I choked on my words. "I never agreed to this, Eleanor. I haven't even seen this document until tonight. Why would you sign for me? Or did Michael forge my name?" She slammed her scissors down, a flash of guilt in her eyes that instantly morphed into rage. "Oh, what is wrong with you? We are a married family. Your husband's property, your property transferring it to your mother-in-law's name is standard asset protection. Are you secretly calculating against us? Are you afraid I'm going to steal from you?" I bit my lip, forcing myself to stay calm. "I am not calculating, but the law is the law. This signature is not mine. This is forgery. If something happens, I'm legally liable." She tilted her chin up. "Forgery? Watch your mouth. You live in my house, eat my food, and the moment you have an issue, you threaten to air our dirty laundry to the cops? Let me tell you something. When you marry into this family, you put the family first. Stop clinging to a few pieces of paper, and remember what loyalty looks like." She stood up abruptly and marched upstairs, leaving me standing alone with the forged deed in my hand. My heart was pounding against my ribs, a mix of pure rage and sheer terror. That night, after Eleanor was asleep and while Michael was still out networking, I took all 4 deeds and the corporate credit card statements and walked to a 2-4-hour diner down the street. I ordered a black coffee, opened my laptop, scanned every single page, and securely emailed them to David Hayes. 10 minutes later, he called me. "Kate, tell me exactly what happened from the beginning. Stay calm." I told him everything, my voice shaking but clear. On the other end, David was silent for a long moment before saying, "This is a severe felony. If you didn't sign it, and your signature was forged on a notarized document, we have total legal grounds to demand a forensic handwriting analysis and void the transfer entirely." I gripped the phone tightly. "But what does this mean, David?" His voice dropped an octave. "It means this isn't just about voiding a contract. It tells me that your husband's family views stealing your assets as completely acceptable. If they are willing to commit real estate fraud once, they will do it again. You need to prepare yourself for a war." I took a deep breath. "What do I do?" "A few years ago, you asked me to insert a morality clause into his executive contract. I did. Now, I am advising you. From this second forward, every discrepancy you find, every financial crime, every unauthorized expense you document it. Stop arguing with him. It's useless. We are going to speak entirely in the language of evidence and corporate law." I looked at the 4 deeds sitting next to my coffee cup and nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I understand." From that day on, I started paying close attention to things I had previously ignored. Push notifications for Michael's supplementary corporate credit card hit my phone constantly. Luxury steakhouses, downtown boutique hotels, high-end designer boutiques. There were charges for 5-star hotel rooms at 2 a.m. I knew for a fact he wasn't hosting shareholder meetings in a hotel bed at 2 a.m. Every time a notification popped up, Jessica Thorne's name flashed through my mind like a ghost. I didn't scream. I didn't throw plates. I quietly downloaded the PDFs, saved them to a hidden, password-protected folder on my cloud drive. Every line item of reckless spending. Every swipe for a woman who wasn't his wife. I saved them not to torture myself, but so that when the day came, I wouldn't have to argue against his gaslighting about my insane jealousy. One evening at the office, the bank called me. "Miss Vance, the supplementary credit card on your account has exceeded its limit. We need authorization to increase it or an immediate payment." I frowned. "I requested that card be locked last month." The rep hesitated. We received a signed authorization form to unlock it 2 weeks ago with your signature on it, so we processed it." I laughed a dry, hollow laugh. "My signature. Please email me a scanned copy of that form. I'll drop by the branch tomorrow." Looking at the scanned form the next day, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Once again, a perfectly replicated signature. The bank teller looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We just match it against the profile signature. We aren't handwriting experts." I nodded. "It's fine. I don't blame you. But I am putting a hard freeze on this account. No transactions, overrides, or limit increases unless I am physically present with my ID." Driving home, I felt like I was on autopilot. The wind hit the windshield, but I felt freezing cold in my bones. That night, I decided to confront Michael. He came home late. He reeked of gin, his tie was loose, and his shirt was wrinkled. The moment he walked through the door, the images from the day the forged deeds, the maxed-out credit card rushed into my head. I couldn't maintain my icy calm anymore. I waited for him to take off his coat, poured a glass of water, and slammed the 4 property deeds and a printed stack of his credit card statements onto the kitchen island. "Look at this. Explain this to me right now." He glanced at the deeds, then at the statements, and shrugged. "I transferred the properties to my mom's name. It's family property. Keeping it in her name isn't a crime. You were just holding on to it. Giving it back to the family is the right thing to do. And the credit card? I'll pay it off. Why are you making a mountain out of a molehill?" His voice was slurred but defiant. I saw red. The right thing to do? That land was bought with Times, my Times income. I bought it, and I let you co-sign. You didn't ask me a single question before sneaking behind my back to forge a legal document to steal it. That's a felony. And the credit card? You're using corporate funds from the PE firm to pay for it. How are you going to pay it back? He slammed his hand on the marble counter, rattling the glass of water. Stop using that interrogator tone on me. I am your husband, not one of your audit clients. Watch your mouth about forgery. If my mother hears you, her blood pressure will spike. I stared right through him. I'll tell you what's going to happen. I am hiring a forensic handwriting expert. If it proves it's a forgery, I am taking this to court, voiding the transfer, and putting it back in my name. And if you continue taking another woman to hotels using company money, I will take these statements directly to the board of directors and to Apex Capital. Think carefully about your next move. He burst out laughing, a harsh, grating sound. Oh, so your goal is to threaten my presidency? Do you think I owe my future title to you? Without you, someone else would have bailed us out. Stop acting like you're the center of the universe. As he spoke, the smell of gin grew stronger. His eyes bulged. Ever since you moved into this house with your little degrees, you think you're better than everyone. You saved the company once, and you act like you own me. What kind of woman is obsessed with money like this? Honestly, living with you is exhausting. You're not soft and feminine like normal women. All you know how to do is hoard cash. Asterisk, hoard cash. Asterisk. The words hit me like a physical blow. I fought to keep my composure, but tears finally broke through. I hoard cash to keep this family from drowning because of your stupidity and ego. If I were selfish, I would have let your company go bankrupt. But I promise you this. I will not let anyone steal what I worked for and treat it like they found it on the street. You can give your money to whoever you want, but you will not touch mine. I don't know which word wounded his fragile ego, but he suddenly lunged forward. In a fraction of a second, I saw his arm swing, and a sharp, sickening crack times echoed through the cramped kitchen. My left cheek burned like someone had pressed a hot iron to it. My ear rang. It took me half a second to process that my husband had just slapped me across the face. This was the first time. And I promised myself it would be the last. He screamed, his voice thick with liquor. Don't you ever use the law to threaten me again. You are a woman. Know your place. In this house, what my mother says is the law. I raised my hand to my burning cheek. In that moment, the world around me seemed to mute. The TV upstairs, the sirens outside on the Boston streets, the hum of the refrigerator, it all faded into a deep silence. Inside my mind, something heavy finally dropped and shattered into a million pieces. Irreparable. I stopped crying. The tears literally dried up from the shock. I looked at him, and my own voice sounded foreign to me, cold and utterly dead. Okay, from today on, you don't have to worry about me using the law to threaten you. I will use the law to destroy you. You can live by your mother's law. I am going to live by the federal code. I turned around and walked up the stairs. The bedroom door clicked shut behind me, but I knew that another door in my life had just opened, leading me far away from this nightmare. I sat on the edge of the bed, picked up my phone. My thumb hovered for a second before typing a message to David Hayes. Asterisk David. Initiate phase 2. I want him to leave with absolutely nothing. Asterisk I hit send and put the phone down. Outside, Michael was still muttering drunkenly to himself. Inside, my marriage was officially dead, even if the paperwork hadn't caught up yet. After the slap, my face was bruised for a few days before it faded. But the bruise inside me didn't fade. It just turned ice cold. After I texted David to initiate phase 2, the house entered a cold war. I went to work, came home, ate, and slept like a robot. No more arguments, no more tears, no more saying honey. Michael left early and came home late. The scent of cheap floral perfume clung to him. His phone screen would light up with midnight texts. I didn't even bother rolling over to look. We slept in the same bed, but turned completely away from each other, leaving a gap between us colder than a Boston winter. Eleanor saw my bruised face and asked carelessly, "What happened to you?" I replied curtly, "I fell." She stared at me for a moment, then nodded. Well, people fall to learn how to walk. Fall a few times, and you learn your place. Just make sure you don't fall right when this family is ascending. It sounded like a joke, but she meant every word. One Sunday morning, Eleanor spent an hour getting dressed. She wore a tailored suit, her hair perfectly coiffed, holding a designer handbag. Michael, get dressed. We're driving up to the Berkshires today. We need to see the guru at the sanctuary. I've been incredibly anxious lately. Since the $15,000 psychic fiasco, I thought she had given up. But my refusal only pushed her to find a different charlatan. Michael yawned. You go, Mom. I have a Zoom call with the board, she snapped. What Zoom call? The presidency is right there, and people are gunning for it. If you don't secure your spiritual alignment, you'll lose it. Get up, he ultimately caved. I stood in the kitchen watching the two of them drive away, thinking to myself, I wonder what new sins this guru will invent for me today. Late that afternoon, as soon as they walked in, Eleanor yelled out, Catherine, come down here right now. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked to the living room. The TV was off. The room was dead silent, save for the faint smell of sage she had clearly brought back with her. She sat dead center on the sofa, her face looking like stone. This is a monumental time for this family. I'm going to say this once, so sit down. I sat, folding my hands together so they wouldn't shake. Michael stood by the window, looking unusually restless. Eleanor took a deep breath. This morning, we went to the sanctuary. The guru read Michael's life path, and he told us this. She stared right into my eyes, dropping each word like a lead weight. My son is destined for the ultimate executive seat, but his path is being blocked by his wife. His energy aligns with power. Your energy is a parasite that kills husbands and destroys wealth. If he doesn't cut ties with you before he takes office, a massive disaster will strike. He will lose the job. Or worse, he'll lose his life. My heart skipped a beat. I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm, what exactly is this disaster? She slammed her hand on the coffee table. Do you not understand English? The guru said, you have a shadow aura. Ever since you entered this house, the company has faced nothing but problems. We barely survived the last crisis because of our ancestors' blessings, not you. Now he's about to be president, and you are still here. The guru said it's like having a ticking time bomb in the house. Do you get it now? I laughed a dry, bitter laugh. I thought the company survived because a private equity firm bailed us out. And they bailed us out because Times negotiated the deal. Before I could finish, she cut me off. Shut up. Don't bring up your stupid contracts. A person's destiny isn't written on a spreadsheet. The guru said it. If he wants the presidency, he must divorce you and sever the dark energy. That is the only cure. If not, you better prepare to wear black to his funeral. The air in the room grew thick. Michael turned his face toward the window, refusing to look at me. I asked him, my voice eerily peaceful. So, you want a divorce? She nodded without hesitation. Yes. I'll speak plainly. You are young, you're smart, you have a CPA. You can marry whoever you want. I won't stop you. But I only have one son. I will not trade his life and career for any woman. Sign the papers so his energy is clean for the promotion. I turned to Michael. And you? You believe a fraud in the Berkshires over your own wife? He avoided my gaze, muttering. I'm scared, Kate. I've been having nightmares, terrible headaches. The guru said it's a sign of a spiritual attack. I have to think about my future. I burst out laughing again. Your future? Do I not get a future? He winced. Don't say it like that. If we divorce now, I'll compensate you. We'll end it peacefully. You're brilliant. You'll survive. But I can't risk my entire life's work over feelings. I looked at the two of them and suddenly felt like I was watching a bizarre theater production where I was a character being forcefully written out of the script so the lead actor could shine. A few days later, Jessica Thorne showed up at our house. She wore a modest pastel dress, carrying a basket of fresh fruit, smiling sweetly. Hi, Eleanor. Hi, Kate. I just came by to drop off some corporate files for Michael and to check on your health. My mother-in-law lit up like a Christmas tree. Oh, honey, You came all the way here. Come in. Treat this like your own home. I poured them water but didn't take my eyes off the two of them. When Eleanor went upstairs to take a phone call, Jessica reached into her designer tote bag and pulled out a thick, leather-bound folder. Here are the documents you asked me to print, Michael. Your lawyers drafted it. I tweaked a few sentences to make it sound a bit softer. I couldn't hear their whispers, but I saw Michael nod, looking at her with absolute gratitude. When Jessica stood up to leave, she turned to me with a flawless, professional smile. Kate, I just hope everyone finds happiness. Sometimes, letting go early saves a lot of pain, don't you think? I looked straight into her eyes and smiled coldly. Yes. Letting go of delusions early definitely saves pain. Jessica faltered for a second, then forced her smile back and walked out. That night, Michael walked into the living room holding the leather folder I had seen earlier. He placed it on the coffee table and pushed it toward me. This is the divorce petition. I had my lawyers draft it. Everything is as fair as possible. I keep the court seat. You keep your dignity. I flipped to the first page. Asterisk petition for dissolution of marriage. Asterisk. The allegations below made me laugh out loud because they were so predictably insulting. I was listed as a neglectful wife, failing my marital duties, overly controlling, and causing emotional distress that impacted his executive standing. The asset division was the punchline. Everything, with both our names on it, real estate, company shares, which were secretly heavily leveraged, was listed as originating from the husband's family and requested to remain with him. The petitioner will provide the respondent with a nominal lump sum payment for emotional distress. I closed the folder and asked simply, "Do you see a single shred of truth in this document?" He clicked his tongue. Don't nitpick the wording. All legal documents sound like that to get pushed through the courts faster. The main point is that you won't be tied to the company's liabilities anymore. I take on the heavy burden, and you get to walk away clean. I looked at him, remembering the slap, the forged deeds, the corporate credit card swiped for another woman. Then I looked at the thick stack of paper. Strangely, I didn't feel any pain. I only saw clarity. This document was the exact trigger David and I had been waiting for. I spoke slowly. Are you absolutely sure you want to sign this? Time-specific document. He frowned. Is there another one? I shook my head. No. Just making sure. This might be the clearest decision you make in your entire life. You want a divorce to secure your presidency. Fine. But remember, the moment you sign this, your life will take a completely different path. And so will mine. He sighed, trying to sound soothing. I know you're angry, but please, think of my future. The guru's warning was severe. I can't risk it. Just sign it, and let's move on. If you ever need help down the line, I'll still help you. Asterisk, I'll still help you. Asterisk. It sounded like throwing a penny to a beggar. I smiled. All right, I'll consider it. That night, I took the folder to my room, put it on my desk, and turned on the desk lamp. The warm yellow light spilled over the pages of lies. I didn't cry. I pulled out my phone, photographed every single page, and securely messaged them to David. His reply came back seconds later. Asterisk, it is time to pull the trigger, Kate. Asterisk, dear listeners, I imagine some of you might be feeling angry on my behalf. If you feel sympathy for a daughter-in-law who was accused of bringing a death curse upon her husband, who saved his company only to be kicked out the door, please leave a like or a comment. If someone handed you a document like this, would you sign it, tear it to shreds, or quietly plan a masterstroke? Let me know. The second half of this story might surprise you. That night, I sat alone by the window, listening to the muffled traffic of downtown Boston. Inside the house, it was dead silent. I placed my hand on the divorce papers, feeling like I was resting my palm on a cold blade. I knew that the moment I signed, 2 lives would shatter. One belonged to a man dreaming of a CEO's throne. The other belonged to the woman who had bled to build that very throne, and I was about to pull the rug out. The house was eerily quiet that night. I could hear the antique grandfather clock ticking downstairs, the wind rattling the old window panes. The divorce papers sat neatly on the table next to Michael's expensive Mont Blanc pen. Occasionally, a draft would flutter the edges of the paper, as if it were impatient for my signature. I washed my face, looking in the mirror at the faint, fading bruise on my left cheek. It didn't hurt anymore, but staring at my reflection, I wondered, asterisk, when I walk out of here tomorrow, will this bruise be the last thing they remember of me? Asterisk, I pulled up a chair across from the papers, opening the file and reading the absurd accusations again. Surprisingly, I wasn't furious anymore. The fire of my anger had burned out, leaving behind a cold, calculated ash. My phone lit up. A text from David. Asterisk, I read the draft. If you sign this, it proves he is the one initiating the dissolution of the marriage, which triggers the morality and stability clause with Apex Capital. The timing is crucial. What's your plan? Asterisk. I glanced at the bedroom door. I could hear Michael pacing on the roof deck, probably talking to someone on his phone, his voice dipping in and out. A moment later, the bedroom door opened. He leaned against the doorframe. Have you made a decision? Don't drag this out. It's exhausting. I took a deep breath. I will sign. But not tonight. He frowned. Why not? I put the pen down and spoke slowly. You want to secure your presidency, right? I won't stop you. But I have one condition. Tomorrow morning, right before you leave for the shareholder board meeting, I will sign it in front of you and your mother. Once it's signed, I am taking my things and leaving. That way, nobody can ever say I ran away like a coward or begged you to stay. He thought about it for a second. In his mind, he was probably painting a glorious picture. He's in his tailored suit. His mother is beaming. The unwanted wife signs the paper, grabs her suitcase, and vanishes, leaving a clear, red-carpeted path to the CEO's chair. He nodded, visibly relieved. That works. I don't want a messy scene. You sign in the morning, I go to the board meeting. By the afternoon, everything is official. It's best for both of us. I smirked. Yes, best for both of us. He turned to leave, muttering, I'm getting up early. Have everything packed, and don't change your mind. The door clicked shut. I picked up my phone and texted David. Asterisk, I am signing the papers tomorrow morning right before he heads to the board meeting. His meeting starts at 9 a.m. I need you to handle the rest. Asterisk, David's reply was instantaneous. Asterisk, understood. Do exactly what you said. Don't show your hand. Try to get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. Asterisk, I laughed. Asterisk, sleep. Asterisk, what a luxury. I pulled my medium-sized suitcase from the closet. Not too big, not too small. I wasn't planning on dragging my entire life with me. What I needed to carry wasn't physical baggage, but my peace of mind. I folded a few corporate suits, some pajamas, my favorite books, a small cast-iron skillet my parents gave me when I graduated, and a framed photo of my mom, dad, and me back in Scranton. Everything related to the Prescott family stayed behind. The massive, dust-covered wedding album sat on the shelf. Looking at it, I remembered my white dress, his black tuxedo. We were smiling, our eyes full of hope. If someone had told me then that a few years later I'd be packing a suitcase to flee his house, I would have fought them. But life is unpredictable. I zipped the suitcase shut, rolling it across the floor. The wheels clacked against the hardwood times, clack, clack, clack times, a reminder that I was really leaving. This wasn't a bluff. I didn't sleep. I stood on the second-floor balcony, looking down at the Boston streets. It was late, but the city was alive. Cabs rushing by, people stumbling out of pubs, couples arguing over Ubers. The world kept spinning, completely indifferent to the fact that inside this house, a marriage was being dismantled, bolt by bolt. The cool night breeze hit my face. I thought of my mother in Pennsylvania. I remembered her handing me a folded $50 bill at the bus station when I first moved to Boston, her eyes red. Asterisk, remember, Kate, love your husband, but never forget to love yourself. Blood is thicker than water. When you hurt, only your parents truly bleed with you. Don't hold on to something broken just because you're afraid of what people will say. Asterisk. Back then, I reassured her. Asterisk, I picked the right man, Mom. Don't worry. Asterisk now. I realized the truth of the old saying. Asterisk. When we are young, we believe sweet words. When we are old, we fall for false advertising. Asterisk, I leaned against the railing and whispered, I'm sorry, Mom. I chose wrong. But I promise, I am writing the next chapter of my life myself, and I'm going to write it right. Late in the night, Michael woke up to get water. He stood at the balcony door. You still awake? Stop overthinking it. Once you sign, you'll feel free. Lots of women dream of this kind of freedom. I didn't turn around. Are you scared at all? Scared that one day you'll look back and realize you traded away too much? He scoffed. The only thing I'm scared of is losing that presidency. Emotions pass. You'll move on, marry some other guy, and realize this was all just a blip on the radar. I didn't answer. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer of all. He went back to bed and started snoring. I stayed out a while longer before going inside. Before I lay down, I took out a crisp white blouse, ironed it perfectly, and buttoned it up on the hanger. Not because I still cared what they thought, but because tomorrow, the execution needed to be flawless. Every play must begin properly, even if the lead actor is about to fall off the stage. My alarm went off at 6 a.m. I woke up, brushed my teeth, tied my hair into a sleek bun, and put on the white dress. Looking in the mirror, I didn't see a discarded wife. I saw a soldier preparing to leave a battlefield she had fought on for far too long. I left the suitcase by the front door. The divorce papers and the pen were waiting on the coffee table in the living room. At 7 a.m., Eleanor marched down the stairs. She wore a striking crimson dress, her hair sprayed stiff, smelling of cheap, overpowering perfume. She saw the suitcase and smirked. Good, you're packed. Sign the papers clearly. Once you leave, we go our separate ways. Don't come crawling back playing the victim. I smiled thinly. Don't worry, Eleanor. I won't. Michael emerged from his room. Tailored navy suit, perfectly knotted tie, shoes shined to a mirror finish. He sat down and looked at me. Bring the papers over. Let's get this done. I placed the stack of papers on the antique wooden table. The morning sunlight sliced through the window blinds, casting bars across the document. I didn't shake. I skimmed it one last time, not to check for errors, but to permanently burn their lies into my brain. Then, I picked up the pen. Blue ink flowed smoothly. Asterisk Catherine Vance. Asterisk, my name appeared clearly on the respondent line, not a forged signature, not someone else tracing my name. This time, it was my hand. I put the pen down and pushed the papers across the table to Michael. Done. From this exact second, I am no longer your wife. You can go secure your throne now. My mother-in-law threw her head back and laughed. Finally, a woman who knows her place is a smart woman. Don't reach too high, or the fall will kill you. When you walk out that door, don't you dare look back and blame us. I looked at her, my voice eerily calm. I was never reaching too high, Eleanor. I am simply stepping out of the gutter. I stood up, grabbed my suitcase, and walked toward the stairs. The wheels bounced violently against the steps. Times clack, clack, clack times, each sound cutting a final chord. When I reached the front door, I didn't look back. I pulled out my phone, snapped a crystal-clear photo of the signed signature page, and texted it to David with a single word, asterisk, execute. Asterisk. The message showed as Times delivered asterisk, then vanished from my screen. I took a deep breath, pushed open the heavy oak door, and stepped out into the Boston morning air. The street smelled of fresh espresso and ocean salt. Commuters were rushing to work. Behind me, inside that 3-story house, a brand new president was grinning, prepping his victory speech, completely oblivious to the fact that the very signature he demanded on that divorce decree was the exact detonator wired directly to the chair he was about to sit in. When the heavy wrought iron gate of that North End row house clicked shut behind me, my feet felt lighter than air. No more heavy house keys, weighing down my purse. No more nervously glancing up at the third-floor window to see if my mother-in-law was spying on me. There was only the sound of my suitcase rolling on the cobblestones and the glow of my phone screen confirming the Times Execute Times text. I ordered a rideshare. The driver asked, "Where to, ma'am?" I gave him the address of a small, modern corporate apartment in Somerville that David had helped me secure the night before. Just a temporary safe house until the storm passes, he had said. As the car pulled away, I looked back at the familiar narrow street. The historic brick house shrank in the rearview mirror until it disappeared behind delivery trucks and corner bodegas. There was a dull ache in my chest, but it wasn't a heartbreak. It felt more like pulling a rotten tooth. It hurt, but the poison was finally gone. The new apartment was barely 400 square feet, a small kitchenette attached to a living space, and a bedroom just big enough for a bed and a dresser. The balcony overlooked a small, quiet park. I put my suitcase in the corner, opened the window, and took a deep breath of fresh air. David arrived around 8 a.m. He wore a crisp blue dress shirt under a gray blazer, carrying a thick legal binder. He walked in, glancing around. "You holding up okay? This place isn't too small?" I nodded. "To me, this is a palace. At least here, nobody calls me that girl." He smiled tightly, instantly switching to lawyer mode. "Show me the text." I handed him my phone. The screen displayed the photo of the signed divorce decree, sent exactly when I walked out the door. He opened his binder and pointed to a highlighted section. "Here is Clause 4.1 of the Apex Capital Operating Agreement. As soon as the board meeting convenes, the Apex representatives and I will present the facts. Because Michael Prescott proactively demanded and initiated a divorce, creating a marital dissolution, compounded by severe ethical violations, his executive authority is instantly suspended, pending a formal review. And when I drop the dossier of his forged deeds and corporate embezzlement, trust me, the board won't dare look the other way." I asked, "Are you sure they'll side with us?" "The board is entirely his uncles and cousins." David leaned against the counter, his voice low and cynical. "People defend family when it's free. When it costs them millions of dollars, it's every man for himself. You've presented them with a binary choice. Protect an incompetent, embezzling relative and lose the Apex funding, or fire him to save their own portfolios. Which do you think they'll pick?" I stayed silent for a moment. He was right. When it comes to corporate finance, blood is rarely thicker than money. I no longer had any delusions about being the center of their universe. I just felt secure knowing I didn't walk into this war unarmed. David checked his watch. "It's almost 9 a.m. The meeting is starting. I have to be at the headquarters. Stay here. Don't go anywhere. I'll update you." "Good luck, David. Drive safe." As he reached the door, he turned back. "Kate, prepare yourself. By tonight, there are going to be people calling you a snake, a gold digger, a traitor. Ignore them. Remember what I told you. Being a saint guarantees nothing, but being a fool guarantees you'll be a victim. You stopped being a fool today. That's enough." I laughed out loud. It was the first genuine laugh I'd had in months. Later, through David and a few former colleagues, I pieced together exactly what happened in the boardroom of Prescott Enterprises that morning. At 8:30 a.m., Michael pulled into the corporate parking lot. Riding shotgun was Jessica Thorne. She wore a sleek, form-fitting dress, carrying his leather laptop bag, beaming brightly. They walked through the lobby, intentionally slowing their pace so everyone could see them. Employees whispered near the elevators. "Looks like Michael is officially getting the crown today." "Yeah, look at the swagger. Where's his wife?" He's got the assistant practically glued to his hip. Michael didn't hear the whispers, or if he did, he ignored them. In his mind, he was already sitting at the head of the mahogany table, the corporate logo glowing behind him, the shareholders giving him a standing ovation. The 12th floor boardroom was freezing that morning. The AC was cranked high. The nameplates of the board of directors were arranged precisely. At the far end sat the representative from Apex Capital, a stoic, middle-aged woman from New York, whose face gave nothing away. Sitting right next to her was David Hayes, holding his leather briefcase, his eyes completely devoid of warmth. Michael strutted in, flashing a $1,000,000 smile. "Good morning, uncles, cousins, team. Today is a very special day for all of us." No one met his enthusiasm. A few awkward nods, some nervous glances traded across the table. He sat in the chairman's seat, clearing his throat. "Well, to begin, allow me to." Before he could finish his sentence, The Apex Capital representative raised her hand. "Excuse me." Before Mr. Prescott begins his remarks, I have instructed our legal counsel to present a critical matter regarding his standing as an executive. The temperature in the room plummeted. Michael frowned, trying to save face. Is there a problem? I thought today was our annual shareholder vote. The agenda was distributed. David stood up, pulling a small microphone closer. His voice was steady, monotone, but every word hit like a sledgehammer. Members of the board, representatives of Apex Capital. Per the operating agreement signed between Prescott Enterprises and Apex Capital 3 years ago, specifically Section 4, the executive authority and presidency of Michael Prescott is contingent upon 2 conditions. 1. No severe ethical violations that damage the firm's standing. 2. The marital union with Catherine Vance remains intact and is not dissolved due to the fault of Mr. Prescott. He paused, glancing at Michael, whose face had instantly lost a shade of color. "Counselor, what is the meaning of this?" Michael demanded. "My family matters have nothing to do with corporate bylaws." David ignored him, addressing the room. This morning, at approximately 7:15 a.m., Catherine Vance signed a petition for dissolution of marriage initiated by Michael Prescott. According to the evidence submitted, this divorce is the direct result of a pattern of severe financial and marital misconduct by Mr. Prescott. This includes, but is not limited to, forgery of real estate deeds, misappropriation of marital assets, and unauthorized use of corporate credit accounts for illicit personal expenses. David placed a massive binder onto the polished mahogany table, turning the spine so everyone could see it. This is the summary dossier of evidence, alongside a photograph of the signed divorce decree, executed this morning, which was transmitted to Apex Capital prior to this meeting. The room erupted into chaos. Uncles gasped. A cousin muttered, "A divorce? This morning?" The Apex representative spoke up, her voice icy and polite. "We are extremely disappointed. However, pursuant to the signed bylaws, a breach of these conditions results in the immediate, automatic suspension of Mr. Prescott's executive authority. Today's meeting will not proceed with his confirmation as regional president. We formally request the board appoint an interim executive immediately and commence a full internal audit regarding the alleged financial misconduct." Michael shot out of his chair, the heavy seat violently scraping the floor. "You set me up. This is a private matter between me and my wife. A divorce has nothing to do with you. Who wrote that clause? Who authorized this?" David looked at him with dead eyes. "You should remember, you signed it as the primary representative of this company. The document bears your signature, your mother's signature as majority shareholder, and the corporate seal. Catherine Vance drafted the terms with Apex's legal team. If you didn't read the fine print, that is your own negligence, not a failure of the law." A dry chuckle escaped from the corner of the room. The stares directed at Michael shifted from respect to blatant annoyance and suspicion. Uncle Richard, who had been gloating at my house just weeks prior, spoke up. "Michael, sit down. Yelling isn't going to fix this. The bylaws are binding. Apex has made their position clear. We have to pivot. We cannot let the entire firm burn to the ground because of your domestic issues." Michael glared at him. "What are you saying? I bled for this company. I brought in these contracts. Now, just because that bitch signed a piece of paper, you're all turning your backs on me?" The Apex executive stared him down. "It is not just a piece of paper. The divorce is merely the catalyst. We have received extensive documentation of your misuse of corporate funds. You have been utilizing Apex-backed corporate cards for personal luxury expenses, including unauthorized travel. Today, we are simply executing the contract you agreed to." David opened a second folder. Here are the redacted credit card statements. Over the past 6 months, multiple transactions at luxury hotels, high-end boutiques, and resort getaways were charged to the corporate account. Several of these occurred at 2 a.m. Would you like to explain how these qualify as business expenses? On the massive projector screen at the front of the room, a graph appeared. Red dots indicated every illicit charge. It was glaringly obvious. Sitting in my small apartment, I couldn't see the projector. I only heard the ticking of the wall clock and my phone sitting quietly on the counter. I brewed a pot of Earl Grey tea. As the steam rose, I poured a cup and thought to myself, asterisk, I am not in that room, but my entire life is being rewritten by what happens there. All I have to do is stay calm. Asterisk, around 10 a.m., my phone vibrated. A text from a senior accountant at Prescott Enterprises, a woman who used to ask me for advice on quarterly reports. Asterisk, Kate. It's a bloodbath in here. Your lawyer is tearing him apart. The board is dead silent. I don't think he's ever coming back from this. Are you okay? Asterisk, I replied with 2 words. Asterisk, I'm fine. Take care of yourself. Asterisk, I set the phone down and looked at my half-empty teacup. A tiny pang of guilt flashed through me, but I immediately squashed it. I didn't push him off a cliff. I just stopped holding the rope while he sprinted toward the edge. Back in the boardroom, the mood had turned completely toxic. A senior founding partner spoke up. Let's be honest here. Ever since Catherine came aboard, our books have finally been balanced. I was ready to pull my equity years ago because of the sloppy management. Given the current situation, I moved to immediately terminate Michael Prescott from all executive functions pending an investigation. Furthermore, I propose we reach out to Catherine to return in an executive capacity or accept an appointee from Apex. That statement was the final nail in the coffin. Michael slammed his fists onto the table. Are you out of your minds? My wife? She divorces me, and you want to hand her the company? Over my dead body. David shrugged. You can relax. Catherine has formally declined any offer to return to this firm. Her only demand is that the company operates transparently, and Apex's funds aren't used as a personal piggy bank. As for you, you no longer have any say in the matter. The Apex representative signaled to the corporate secretary. A lightning-fast, brutal vote was taken. As David described it later, the math was devastatingly simple. An overwhelming majority voted to terminate Michael Prescott from all managerial roles, stripping him of his title, his access, and his authority. When the vote was finalized, Michael finally understood. His face turned paper white. Sweat dripped down his forehead despite the freezing AC. At 11 a.m., David called me. Round 1 is over. How did it go? Terminated from all positions, security badge revoked, company car confiscated, corporate seal handed over. The accounting department is auditing the statements right now. As for the forged property deeds, I've separated that into a civil suit. We can press criminal felony charges if you want to see him in prison, but if you just want a clean break, we'll file civilly to void the transfers and take the properties back. I was quiet for a moment. I don't want to send him to prison. The best prison for him is the life he's about to live. I just want back what is legally mine. That's enough. David chuckled softly. I figured you'd say that. Get some lunch. I'll come by this afternoon, and we'll discuss the North End house. I hung up, staring blankly at the wall for a second before bursting into laughter. This time, it was a light, airy laugh, like watching the climax of a long, dramatic movie. In my mind, I saw Michael from that morning, grinning in his tailored suit. Asterisk, today is a very special day for all of us. Asterisk, yes, very special. But not the way he dreamed. The divorce decree, written to purge the dark energy from his life, had become the guillotine that chopped off his crown. Karma is far more efficient than we think. It doesn't rush, but when the wind, the rain, and the storm align, the rotten fruit falls. And that morning, on the 12th floor of a glass tower, the first fruit dropped to the shock of everyone in the room. Meanwhile, for the first time in years, I sat in a space that belonged to nobody but me, peacefully watching my old life veer off a cliff. David texted me again before noon. Asterisk, he's officially out of the building, escorted by security. Asterisk, David later told me the details. After the vote, the chief financial officer, a woman I knew well, was brought in. She stood up, her hands shaking, and read the itemized list of his illicit expenses out loud. 5-star hotel by the harbor. Luxury suite. Charged at 1:32 a.m. Weekend resort in Cape Cod. 2 nights. High-end designer boutiques for women's apparel. She passed the photocopied receipts around the table. The uncles winced. The younger cousins looked down, biting their lips. The Apex representative delivered the final blow. We do not invest millions of dollars to fund the CEO's extramarital affairs. If the board wishes for us to remain, handle this permanently." Michael was forced to stand up and walk out in total silence. No applause, no handshakes. My former colleague texted me the lobby drama. Asterisk. When he got to the lobby, Jessica ran after him. I thought she was going to cry and beg him to stay. Nope, she flipped a switch instantly. She screamed at him in front of everyone. "Stop following me. I am just an employee. You get drunk and harass me. And now that you're caught, you're trying to drag me down with you." The security guards had to step between them. Jessica clutched her files, acted like a traumatized victim, and marched straight back to the elevators. Asterisk. The woman who had called him honey 24 hours ago wiped her hands clean of him, faster than a spilled coffee. Michael stood frozen in the lobby, his tie crooked, his eyes bloodshot. The security guard politely held out a hand. "Sir, I need your badge and corporate keys. Building policy. Please understand." Michael fumbled in his pocket, pulling out the heavy plastic keycard that used to open every door in the building. He handed it over. The card beeped once as it was deactivated, locking him out of his own kingdom forever. I didn't find out he had lost his job from him, but from his family. By late afternoon, my phone was ringing off the hook. Aunt Helen, Uncle Richard. The first thing they yelled was, "Kate, what did you do to get Michael fired?" I replied simply, "I didn't do anything but sign the divorce papers Eleanor handed to me." The line went dead. That evening, Michael stumbled into the North End house looking like a corpse. His suit jacket was crumpled, his tie shoved in his pocket, his perfectly gelled hair a sweaty mess. Eleanor shrieked, "What happened? What do you mean you lost the presidency? The whole family is waiting for you to elevate us." He screamed back, "It's her fault. It's that bitch's fault. She signed the papers today so Apex could use the morality clause to blindside me. She and her lawyer orchestrated a hit job." Listening to the story later, I found it hilarious. He signed the papers, he committed the fraud, he broke the law, but somehow, I was still the villain. Eleanor cried hysterically, then spent hours calling all her relatives for support. Instead of sympathy, she got heavy sighs. A few cousins bluntly told her, "Look, if the business is going under, we have to protect our own assets. Nobody wants to be tied to a sinking ship." The prestige of being the president's mother vanished before she could even brag about it. 2 days later, the entire Prescott clan marched to my parents' temporary rental in Boston. My father brewed a pot of coffee, sat down at the table, and calmly asked, "So, what can we do for you today?" Eleanor didn't beat around the bush. "We have lived in that North End house for years. We renovated it. It is marital property. Now that they are divorcing, we demand you give Michael his rightful equity. You cannot throw my son and me out on the street, like dogs." Before I could speak, my father stood up, opened a drawer, and placed a thick legal folder on the table. He flipped to the deed. "Look very closely at this." Eleanor snatched it. The bold text was unmistakable. Asterisk property owner, Catherine Vance. Asterisk below it, the legal addendum. Asterisk purchased prior to marriage, utilizing inheritance funds and personal savings. Asterisk my father's voice was steady and hard. "This house is my daughter's personal asset. She bought it before she ever met your son, and she allowed you to live there out of the goodness of her heart. Now that the marriage is over, we are reclaiming our property. You have exactly 7 days to vacate. If you are not gone, I will file a formal eviction notice and have the sheriff remove you." Eleanor's eyes bulged. "You can't be serious. I've lived here for years. All the neighbors think it's our ancestral home. You're telling me I was just a guest?" My father didn't raise his voice. "Living somewhere a long time doesn't make you the owner. The law looks at deeds, not neighborhood gossip. I am not stealing a single brick from you, but I will not let my daughter lose her home. 7 days, not a day more." Michael sat in total silence, his face ashen. He looked around the house, suddenly realizing that from the very beginning, he had been nothing but a parasite feeding off his wife both at work and at home. When they walked out the door, I could hear their phones ringing. Relatives demanding back the money they had lent them for investments, business partners calling in debts. The bank calling about massive lines of credit. The North End row house, which was once their ultimate status symbol, was now just a place they were being legally evicted from. And for the first time, in their eyes, I wasn't the cursed daughter-in-law. I was the landlord throwing them out onto the street. After being evicted from the historic row house, Eleanor and Michael ended up in a dilapidated, run-down apartment in a sketchy suburb outside Boston. The roof leaked when it rained. The walls were covered in mildew, and the hallway smelled of weed and cheap takeout. I only knew this through photos sent by a mutual acquaintance. Michael, looking disheveled in a wrinkled shirt, was photographed hauling boxes of cheap merchandise for a shady late-night logistics company. Eleanor's health deteriorated rapidly. She developed severe arthritis and asthma from the mold. Right at their lowest point, Jessica Thorne appeared. One rainy afternoon, she knocked on their cheap apartment door. She wore a simple dress, no heavy makeup, clutching a black and white ultrasound photo. Michael. I'm pregnant. Michael, who was washing dishes in the tiny sink, froze, his eyes wide. Mine. Jessica bit her lip, turning to Eleanor, her voice trembling. I didn't want to bother you, but you know Michael is a man. Things happen. I'm pregnant. I'm not asking him to marry me. I just need some financial support to get through the pregnancy, maybe a better apartment, so your grandson doesn't suffer. Hearing the word times grandson asterisk, Eleanor's eyes lit up with desperate hope. She had craved a male heir her entire life. She grabbed Jessica's hands, crying, Don't worry, I will raise my grandson. We still have some assets. We can take out a high-interest loan. As long as you give me a boy, I can die in peace. Over the next few weeks, Jessica played them perfectly. One day it was, Eleanor, I need cash for my prenatal vitamins. The next day it was, my landlord is raising my rent. I need a deposit for a new place. Michael secretly sold his last remaining asset, a luxury watch, and handed the cash to Jessica. Eleanor pawned her last pair of diamond earrings. Then, an anonymous manila envelope arrived. A neighborhood kid said a guy paid him $10 to leave it at their door. Inside was a certified medical lab report. The header clearly stated, asterisk patient, Michael Prescott, semen analysis, asterisk. It was from the fertility clinic we had visited years ago. The conclusion at the bottom was highlighted in yellow, asterisk severe oligospermia. Sperm count practically zero. Probability of natural conception is less than 1%. Asterisk Eleanor read the paper, her hands violently shaking. Michael, what is this? What did the doctor tell you back then? Michael turned pale, stammering. They said something like that, but I thought I was just stressed. I thought it was a mistake. Jessica's face dropped. She tried to fake a smile. Well, miracles happen, right? Medicine isn't an exact science. But Eleanor's eyes had changed. She crumpled the paper and lunged at Jessica. A miracle? Whose bastard are you carrying? Tell me the truth. Backed into a corner, Jessica dropped the innocent act. She glared at Eleanor. Don't blame me. Did I force you to believe me? I just need money for my kid. I don't care who claims it. Eleanor screamed and grabbed Jessica's designer handbag. A stack of receipts, hotel keycards, and club VIP passes spilled across the cheap linoleum floor. In the struggle, Jessica violently shoved her. Eleanor lost her balance, fell backward, and the back of her head slammed hard against the edge of a radiator. She let out a horrifying shriek, then went completely limp. In the ensuing chaos, Jessica didn't hesitate. She ripped a gold necklace right off Eleanor's neck, grabbed her bag, and bolted out the door, screaming back, Useless, broke losers. You don't have a dime to your name, and you want to play daddy? The neighbors heard the screaming and called 911. When the paramedics arrived, they found Eleanor sprawled on the floor, the left side of her face drooping, her eyes rolled back. As for Michael, the man who once dreamed of corner offices and legacy heirs, he was on his knees on the wet, filthy floor, weeping over his paralyzed mother, surrounded by crumpled medical records that proved he was a complete failure. After the fall, Eleanor was rushed to the ER. The diagnosis was a massive stroke, causing left-side hemiplegia. The doctor handed Michael a clipboard with the estimated costs. Emergency surgery, neuro ICU, specialized medication. Michael asked weakly, "Does Medicare cover all of this?" The doctor shook his head. "Only a fraction of the long-term rehab. You need to prepare financially. Stroke recovery is incredibly expensive." I was told later that he stood at the billing counter, pulling out a wallet that contained exactly $40. He had no house, no corporate equity, and the 4 investment properties had been legally seized back by me. He had nothing but debt. Unable to get a standard bank loan, he turned to predatory payday lenders and loan sharks. The contracts he signed were laced with brutal interest rates. Thugs with neck tattoos started showing up at the hospital, chewing gum and patting his shoulder. "Sign the paper, Mikey. You're a tough guy. Work a few extra shifts, you'll pay it off." Michael's extra shifts began there. By day, he worked at a lumber yard in the suburbs, hauling heavy timber, dripping with sweat. By night, he took a graveyard shift at a massive Amazon-style distribution center outside Boston, loading heavy freight boxes onto trucks until his back bled. A former friend texted me a blurry photo. A gaunt, exhausted man in a faded t-shirt, carrying a massive crate, his head hung low. I had to look closely to recognize my ex-husband. As for Eleanor, after the surgery, she was moved to a low-income rehab facility. Half of her body was totally unresponsive, her mouth drooped, and she could only mumble incomprehensibly. The nurses said that in her delirium, she often called out my name. "Kate, fetch me some water. Kate, is dinner ready?" But the only person sitting by her bed was Michael. He would massage her deadened leg while constantly looking over his shoulder, terrified a loan shark was going to walk through the door. The man who once mocked me for hoarding cash was now counting pennies to buy generic aspirin, signing his life away to thugs. On the other side of Boston, I was sitting in a corner office with a view of the skyline. After the divorce, I accepted an offer from a multinational firm. The CEO was William Sterling, the very man who had sat across from me during a corporate merger years prior. On my first day, Will told me, "I don't need you to play the obedient wife here, Kate. I just need you to protect our assets and protect yourself." I laughed. After so many years, it was the first time a man had spoken to me with genuine, professional respect. The job consumed me in the best way. Board meetings, negotiating with Wall Street banks, flying between New York, Chicago, and San Francisco. Nobody asked me when I was going to have a baby. Nobody judged me for being a divorced woman at 30. They only cared about how brilliantly I balanced the ledgers and forecasted revenue. I went back to my modern apartment in Somerville every night, cooked for myself, poured a glass of wine, and sat on the balcony, watching the city lights. There were moments of loneliness, but I never once missed the suffocating, damp walls of that North End row house. 2 years later, I was promoted to CFO of the North American division. When I got the promotion, Will joked, "Years ago, you saved your husband's company. Now you're saving entire countries. Funny how life works out, huh?" I replied, "At least now I only save people who actually deserve it." Will smiled. There was a mutual respect between us, maybe something more, but it wasn't the kind of desperate, toxic dependency I was used to. It was an equal partnership. My wealth grew steadily. One day, getting coffee with David and Will, I pitched an idea. I want to open my own consulting firm. Financial literacy, specifically for women, so they don't fall into the same traps I did. David grinned. "Brilliant. Being the queen of your own bank account is a lot better than being a daughter-in-law holding a fake set of keys." Will nodded in agreement. "My firm will be your first major client. If you want to build it, I'll back your reputation." And so, my consulting firm was born. The office was small, but on opening day, it was packed with women of all ages. Small business owners, corporate climbers, divorced mothers starting over. I stood at the front, teaching them about emergency funds, the legalities of property deeds, and why you should never hand your financial